Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast episode number 862 for the 13th of April 2025. Richard Saunders coming to you from sunny Sydney, Australia. And I think the first clue, the first tantalizing indication that the weather is getting cooler, it might be out there. It might be, as April often does, fool me. But I can be hopeful. I do like the cooler days. But no matter where you are, I hope you're having a good day, even if it's going to be a bit warm. Maybe you can go for a nice walk along the coast. Don't live near the coast? Well, there's always virtual reality, I guess. Coming up on this week's show, for crying out loud, is Kat McLeod. And this week, Kat will look at society's obsession with the health and wellness industry. Are you feeling well? How well do you need to feel? Diets? Exercise? Find out with Kat McLeod. Following that, we look at the howling success of the reintroduction from extinction of the dire wolf. Or is it? There are doubts. Well, this is the Skeptic Zone, by the way. Yes, there are doubts whether these people who claim to have de-extinctified, what's the word? Brought back from extinction the dire wolf, the North American predator. And we seek the opinions online of Brian Dunning and other people. And I must admit, when this story first flashed across the news headlines earlier in the week, I was frankly skeptical. It's such a big claim to say that someone or some institution has brought an animal back from extinction. Find out why we are skeptical when we look at the supposed resurrection of the dire wolf. Following that, Kat McLeod returns to read this week's newsletter from the Australian Skeptics, written by Tim Mendham. It's Kat this week because Adrian Hill, who normally reads that, is lost in the Pacific Ocean on a boat. I think she's going to be lost for a long time, maybe until July, when we might pick her up on her little raft in the Bermuda Triangle. Don't forget, there's a wonderful trip being planned with lots of skeptics. It's like a skeptic convention on the high seas. I'll be there. Adrian Hill will be there. Brian Dunning will be there. My old friend Jeff Wagg will be there. Ben Radford. My goodness me, Ben Radford. Lara Benham from the Australian Skeptics will be there, and many more people. Ross Blotcher. The list just goes on and on. For more information about that skeptical event on the high seas, lost in the Bermuda Triangle, go to the Skeptic Zone homepage, scroll down, and on the right you'll see Bermuda Triangle. That's just under the picture of Michelle Bijkersma. Anyway, that's why Kat McLeod is reading this week's newsletter. Then to round off the show, back to the TROVE Archives, the digital archives from Australia, newspapers, magazines, and so on. We're going to look for references to psychic precognition. Is that what you do to a car before you start it? You precognition it? Something like that. Now, on last week's show, speaking of the name Bijkersma, we mentioned that at Skeptics in the Pub here in Sydney, there was a talk by Karen Bijkersma entitled Catfish, Fishing and Other Online Predators, a cautionary tale about romance scams. And I'm pleased to say that the whole talk was videoed by none other than Maynard. I did a little bit of production on that. It's been uploaded to YouTube, and you can watch this very important talk now. Just follow the links in this week's show notes to Karen Bijkersma's talk, Catfish Fishing, and that's spelled Phishing, and Other Online Predators. I recommend you watch that video. Well, that's enough for me at the moment. It's time for me to run downstairs and feed the cats. What will it be this morning? They have a choice. They've got these sort of crunchy kibbles. They've got little cat food, which is something like chicken and salmon in little long tubes. It's a paste. they like for treats. There's also a little bit of chicken in the fridge. While I decide what they get for breakfast, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
For crying out loud. It's Kat McLeod. Hello, this is Kat McLeod, coming to you from latitude 53.5-ish in the Northern Hemisphere. Dear listener, do you know what the #1 consumed content on the internet is? No, it's not that. And it's not cute animal videos either. It's health and wellness content. Part of the reason for that is because the term health and wellness has become a huge umbrella that encompasses a vast array of topics, ranging from fitness and nutrition advice to mental health resources and mindfulness practices to pseudoscience, mixed with popular platforms like MyFitnessPal and Yoga Journal, along with fitness trackers and apps, in addition to countless influencers all over social media platforms, including YouTube and blogging sites. Society seems to have a sick obsession with being healthy. The term wellness means something different to everyone, and healthy is being used as a catch-all in place of well-balanced. Our society seems to believe that health is a given, and if you're unhealthy, it is somehow your fault. In reality, health is a luxury that not everyone can attain or maintain. In 2021, Health Canada reported that 45% of Canadians had at least one chronic illness, and the stats are similar for Americans. In 2022, 61% of Australians were living with at least one selected long-term health condition. And in 2023, the European Commission reported that 35% of people in the EU reported having a long-standing or chronic health problem. Wellness has replaced fashion as a hot topic. It's seen as a status symbol or a lifestyle, creating new trends and fads. From the latest workouts to diets, everyone wants to be on the bleeding edge for what will make them look their best. Fake science, misleading headlines, and jargon get clicks and sell products. Consumers are bombarded with myths, misinformation, and pseudoscience. Science is being skewed by clickbait titles on dubious science topics based on low-quality studies, which have often been completed more for a catchy press release than for any genuine research purposes. Many of the studies are published in journals funded by the wellness industry. 40% of university health and medical press releases contain exaggerated health advice, and 33% overemphasized a causal connection and exaggerated inference to humans based on animal research. 81% of news stories, respectively, contained similar exaggeration. Often journalists lack the background and access to experts to verify claims, leaving questionable claims to go unchecked before being published. It's difficult for consumers to discern fact from fiction with misleading headlines and buried facts. Health news and scientific discoveries have become a marketing-first approach to get media attention at the expense of good science. And even retracted articles continue to get traffic years after they've been identified as providing false information. A perfect example of that is how the MMR vaccine causes autism myth will not disappear, even though it was retracted in 2010. Andrew Wakefield falsified, or totally fabricated, the data, and it was proven to be an elaborate fraud by 2011. Despite Wakefield being discredited and the fraud being exposed, with the help of influencers and celebrities like Ron Schneider, Tony Braxton, Jessica Biel, and of course, Jenny McCarthy, the myth has grown now to include all vaccines, and it stokes conspiracy theorists to this day. Make no mistake, the health and wellness industry is big business. In November 2024, the Global Wellness Institute reported that the industry was globally worth $6.3 trillion, which surpasses Germany's total gross domestic product. And it's predicted to increase to $9 trillion by 2028. It currently represents over 6% of global GDP. While many in the pseudoscience realm complain about Big Pharma, the wellness industry has officially surpassed the pharmaceutical industry. By a lot. Wellness is now a larger market than many global mega industries, including IT, sports, and pharmaceuticals. In spite of the rapid growth of the sustainability businesses, the wellness market is now more than 30% larger than the green economy. The wellness market is now roughly 60% the size of all global health expenditures. I find that a striking statistic. People care what the mirror has to say because society has brainwashed us all into believing we're never good enough. Personal care and beauty is the largest category in the industry, valued at $1.2 trillion. It's followed by healthy eating, nutrition, and weight loss, valued at a collective $1.09 trillion. The third biggest category is physical activity, worth an estimated $1.06 trillion. Traditional and complementary medicine is worth an estimated $553 billion, or $500 billion annually. In the relentless search for perfection, some people can become obsessive about their health and wellness, leading to extreme workouts, plastic surgery, disordered eating, and other unhealthy habits. No one wants to be unwell. Being sick isn't fun. Going to the doctor is an ordeal for many people, sitting nervously on that crinkly paper, waiting to find out what's wrong with you, hoping the news isn't too bad. The side effects of medication are often not fun to deal with either. The health and wellness industry subtly reinforces what we've always been told, to eat a well-balanced diet and to be active. Who wouldn't rather do yoga on a beach instead of being in a hospital room? We may blame ourselves for our ill health because we weren't perfect with our eating and exercising in the past. And maybe there's a way, if we went to an extreme, we could somehow atone for our mistakes and make up for all the times we ate for pleasure instead of purpose. The possibility of a natural solution is appealing. Even if you want to see a healthcare professional, not everyone has access to a doctor these days. And with supplements being sold in grocery stores and pharmacies, it's not unreasonable to have a person seek help from unproven supplements to self-medicate and try and cure their ailment, or to seek an alternative treatment while unknowingly disease could be spreading throughout their body. Sadly, this isn't an exaggeration. In 2017, a study published in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute showed that people with cancer who had used alternative medicine instead of conventional treatment had a greater risk of dying. This has been underscored recently by the retelling of the Bell Gibson fake cancer and whole pantry scam that occurred in 2015. It's not just the delay in getting real medical care that causes harm. These poorly regulated treatments cost a lot of money and can create harm by interacting with prescription medication, causing liver inflammation, heart arrhythmias, or even death. Many herbal supplements affect the enzyme systems that regulate how drugs move through the body and are absorbed, distributed, and eliminated. When these enzyme systems are disrupted, medications can become either dangerously ineffective or toxic because they accelerate the breakdown of medications, making them ineffective, change how quickly or slowly medications are eliminated, and can create unpredictable and dangerous drug levels in the blood. St. John's wort is a well-known herbal supplement. It has the most documented interactions with prescription medications. There are 595 known drugs that interact with St. John's wort across 20 different drug classifications, including antibiotics, antidepressants, birth control, blood thinners, anesthetic, and certain pain medications like Tylenol. But you won't find anything on the package that warns you about this. Most people have heard of ginkgo biloba, ginseng, green tea, and protein powders. But let's look at them a little more closely. Ginkgo is used to treat a wide range of ailments, including heart disease, dementia, mental difficulties, and sexual dysfunction. Yet, studies have not proven it effective for any of these conditions or ailments. It interacts with nearly 300 prescription medications, and studies have shown carcinogenic effects on the thyroid and liver. Ginseng is purported to boost immunity, brain function, and energy levels. There are over 100 prescription medications that interact with ginseng. Allergic reactions can occur and involve inflammation of the arteries in the brain, severe skin reactions, and inflammation of the liver. It may cause birth defects if taken during pregnancy or have negative effects on infants if taken while breastfeeding. Green tea extract, and matcha claim to improve cardiovascular health, enhance cognitive function, promote weight loss, regulate blood sugar levels, support digestive health, and protect against certain types of cancer. However, they can cause stomach issues, headaches, sleep issues. It hinders calcium and iron absorption, so it may cause anemia or iron deficiency. Oh, and it's linked to liver disease. In January of this year, a report was published that revealed nearly half of the protein powders in the American market exceeded the safety limits for toxic metals. People use these powders hoping to improve their health, lose weight, gain muscle. It is a market that in 2023 was valued at $9.69 billion. 83% of the products on the market were tested and 47% exceeded the safety thresholds. 21% were over the limit that requires warnings for products containing chemicals linked to cancer, birth defects, or reproductive harm. Plant-based powders had higher levels of metal than whey powders. Chocolate-flavored ones had the highest levels of heavy metals, 4 times more than vanilla. And organic powders had, on average, 3 times the lead and double the cadmium than whey. But these findings don't often make the news because they aren't exciting to talk about. Instead, there are fluff pieces, especially on the morning and midday news programs, that are meant to be health-related, but in fact, they're often pushing pseudoscience under the auspice of ways to, quote, stay healthy, end quote. So, sorry. No one goes from the cradle to the grave healthy. We all experience illness at some point. Society's obsession with healthy devalues people with chronic illnesses and disability. And it seems impossible to achieve wellness with the ever-changing goalposts. Society needs to stop fixating on being, quote, healthy, end quote. We must shift the focus from quick fixes and pseudoscience to self-acceptance and balanced living. While being healthy is a luxury that not everyone can attain, happiness, contentment, and inner peace are within everyone's grasp, provided they have the right support. We need to expose the misinformation and myths while also using clear and precise language. You can't buy health at a store, and wellness doesn't come in the form of an unproven potion or in a green smoothie. Wishing you an abundance of self-acceptance and a well-balanced day. This is Kat McLeod, signing off from Kitty Corner Studios in Edmonton, Canada.
There are many psychics and channelers who claim they are in contact with the Galactic Federation, but we have uncovered the truth. The Adventures of Psychic Penny and the Galactic Federation, Series 1. A daring cosmic space adventure starring Richard Saunders, Kat McLeod, Lara Benham, Maynard, Kathy Reitmeyer, and Adrian Hill as Psychic Penny. Search for The Adventures of Psychic Penny. Now, within the last week, you've probably seen the headlines flashed around the world that a company has managed to bring back the extinct direwolf. The direwolf, and I've seen many examples of direwolf's skulls in the La Brea tar pits, the museum there, the research facility in Los Angeles. If you live in Los Angeles and you haven't been to the La Brea tar pits, say that 6 times quickly, then it's really worth a visit. The first time I went there was, when was that? 15 or so years ago with Brian Dunning, and we had an excellent afternoon looking at the exhibits and even discovering a fresh tar spot. I wonder what you call it. Just outside the museum, we were walking around and there on the ground was up bubbling a little bit of tar. Now, these tar pits are famous because thousands of years ago, when animals of the era, including mammoth, mastodon, or was it just mastodon? I'm not sure. One or the other. Direwolf, camel, ancient camels that would walk along, get stuck in the tar and meet their fate, but their bones were preserved for millennia. So, thousands of years ago, we had these creatures called direwolves roaming North America. Yes, the headlines stating that this company in Texas has brought the animal back by genetically manipulating modern wolves and tweaking their genes, which is not bringing the animal back. It's manipulating and tweaking genes of modern wolves. But the media have simply got a nice catchy headline, which they've used to their advantage. And I noticed a posting by Brian Dunning once again, speaking of Brian Dunning, on this very topic. And he writes, I encourage everybody to be skeptical of colossal biosciences and their claim of having brought back direwolves. Everything about this smells a lot more like Theranos than it does like science. And I wasn't sure what Brian was getting to there, so I had a quick look. Theranos Inc. was an American privately held corporation that was touted as a breakthrough health technology company. So, I see, founder Elizabeth Holmes. Yes, that rings a bell too. And it ceased operations in 2018. And referring to Wiki again, the company claimed that it had devised blood tests that required very small amounts of blood and that could be performed rapidly and accurately, all using compact automated devices that the company had developed. These claims were proven to be false. So to catch up with Brian here again, everything about this smells a lot more like Theranos than it does like science. And these are the points Brian makes about this. 1, they have not published this, nor can I find any record of them having published on any of their work. So it's not even peer-reviewed. This is science by press release. It was sent out to the mass media as a sensational new accomplishment. This is consistent with fundraising, not with doing science. 2, while it's not implausible for Colossal to have spliced in a few genes, they won't say which. That's a big red flag. But moreover, a wolf and a direwolf are far more than a few genes apart. There are 12 million genetic differences. Colossal changed 20. They are not even the same genus. Their last common ancestor was about 6 million years ago, and they evolved separately ever since. You can't make a direwolf by editing a grey wolf. Colossal made grey wolf pups with a few tweaks to make them look superficially a bit like direwolves. 3. The biggest red flag for me is their fundraising. Investors include celebrities, Paris Hilton, Tom Brady, Peter Jackson and Chris Hemsworth, plus a boatload of Silicon Valley bros, plus venture capital firms which have given Colossal a greater than $10 billion valuation. Nobody with any core competence in the field. Brian concludes, this is not how we do science. This feels much more like bilking a bunch of suckers. I think of, in quotation marks, astrophysicist Avi Loeb taking tens of millions from tech bros with a promise of providing alien visitation. I think of Theranos and their celebrity investors who don't have the first clue and have done no due diligence. And I must admit, when I heard about this story, 2 or 3 days ago, it occurred to me that this is quite the extraordinary claim. But it also occurred to me what a wonderfully grabbing headline it is. And of course, it was splashed everywhere. It's such an easy headline, and news outlets know that it is news, regardless of whether it's true or false. It's news, and outlets need news to whack on their news pages. Now, scrolling through various social media outlets, TikTok especially, TikTok is a really interesting mixed bag. There's 90% fluff and rubbish, and 10% interesting, and maybe 1% of that 10% is actually really good information, really interesting, credible scientific information. It's overwhelmed by the amount of people on there spouting nonsense. Lots of psychics are on there. Lots of people channeling the Galactic Federation, which we know is impossible because only Psychic Penny can do that. But I came across the feed here on TikTok of Dr. Cal, C-A-L, you are science pal. Dr. Cal, your science pal. And I don't know terribly much about Dr. Cal, but she is wearing a lab coat. Make of that what you will. And she is in a lab. So there you go. But this is what she has to say.
Now, let's talk about it. A biotech company has just claimed to have de-extincted the direwolf using DNA editing technology. But did they actually? In order to truly bring an animal back from extinction, you need to use ancient DNA samples in order to reconstruct their entire genome, which is just a fancy word for all the DNA inside each of their cells. You then take an egg cell from a closely related living animal, remove its DNA, replace it with the reconstructed DNA from the extinct animal, and then implant it into a viable host womb. The animal born as a result should be genetically indistinguishable from a member of an extinct species, i.e. a perfect clone. The problem is that 10,000-year-old DNA is very difficult to work with. Most of the time, it's basically crumbs. So what these scientists did instead was take fresh DNA from living modern-day wolves, use the DNA editing technology CRISPR-Cas9 to tweak around 14 of their genes in order to give them physical traits that dire wolves would have had. They figured out which genes they needed to tweak by comparing that 10,000-year-old direwolf DNA with the DNA of modern-day wolves to figure out what genetically the direwolves had that modern-day wolves didn't. So in theory, if you compared 10,000-year-old direwolf DNA to the DNA of these puppies that were just born, they should be genetically indistinguishable. But again, 10,000-year-old DNA is famously difficult to get any good information out of, so this methodology might be a little bit shaky. These are not dire wolves per se. They are gray wolves that have been genetically engineered to closely match our best estimate of a dire wolf. And depending on your definition of de-extinct, this isn't even the closest we've ever come.
So I think she makes a valid point there. So the message here is, when you see sensational headlines of extraordinary claims, be skeptical. I don't doubt that in the coming years, the coming decades, tremendous leaps will be made forward into possibly bringing back animals from extinction. We wait and see, but at the moment, what appears to be the case is some genes of modern wolves have been tweaked, and that's it. And thank you to Brian Dunning for giving me permission to quote his thoughts on the matter.
Hallo, ich bin Tim Mendham. Ich bin Herausgeber des australischen Skeptiker-Magazins The Skeptic und ich sitze hier in den Skeptics Towers, den riesigen Hauptquartier der australischen Skeptiker, und ich nehme auf Episoden aus dem Buch 10, die ganze Zeit auf der Skeptic Zone gespielt wird. Also solltet ihr euch auf die Skeptic Zone begeben. Was Skeptic Zone TV ist, sie zum Zuhören, ich und ein paar andere Leute auch. Hi. I'm Tim Mendham. I'm editor of the Australian Skeptics magazine, The Skeptic, and I'm sitting here in Skeptics Towers, the enormous headquarters of the Australian Skeptics, and I'm recording episodes from the Book of Tim, which is played all the time on the Skeptic Zone. So you should get onto the Skeptic Zone, which is skepticzone.tv, for you to listen to me and a few other people as well.
Hello, this is Kat McLeod from Edmonton, and I'm going to read the highlights from the Australian Skeptics Newsletter. This is newsletter number 219. Don't forget, you can sign up to this newsletter at skeptics.com.au and get the full report, complete with all the links, every other week, right in your inbox. But let's see what Tim Mendham has for us. Hi all, says Tim. Ross, any day now, Coulthart, a past winner of the Ben Spoon Award, is becoming as consistent as Uri Geller in making unsubstantiated and overhyped claims, in this case about definitive proof of UFOs. His latest is, quote, huge UFO announcement for the 7th of April, end quote. What he's referring to is a video of UFO searchers, Skywatcher, who summon UFOs to appear through electromechanical or psionic means. The result, part 2 of an ongoing series with lots of talk, lots of superficial sciencey words, and a misunderstanding of scientific method. Replication, anyone? With pointless shots of cars and helicopters rushing hither and thither, and an assumption that classifying UFOs is proof that they exist. Oh, and yes, a modicum of videos of UFOs. Fuzzy, shaky, and definitely not definitive. Back to Coulthart. He is annoyingly predictable about overhyping his amazing revelations, which usually turn out to be less than impressive. Even the UFO-believing community are getting tired of his overselling of the next definitive proof. We look forward to that latest response, although you won't see it on the Skywatcher video. They've turned off the comments. In the meantime, read on. Tim. Well, all right, Tim, if you insist, I will do just that. Skepticon 2025. Skepticon, the Australian Skeptics Annual National Convention, will be returning to Melbourne for the 12th time this year on the weekend of 3 to 5 October. The 41st convention will be held at the Forum Theatre, University of Melbourne. Keep your eyes on the website for more details as they're announced, including the Friday night social and Saturday night dinner. Isn't it great that skeptics always seem to come together when food and drink are involved? Kennedy embraces measles vaccine. In a surprising about-face that will no doubt annoy his anti-vax fellow travelers, RFK Jr. has touted the MMR vaccine as, quote, the most effective way to prevent the spread of measles, end quote. His post on X follows a visit to Texas to meet the families of children who have died from the disease. Experts clash over hidden city beneath Egypt pyramids. Scientists from the University of Pisa and the University of Strathclyde claim to have discovered an underground city beneath the Giza complex. However, Egyptologists are not surprisingly skeptical about the research and question its credibility. Utah bans fluoride in water. Utah has become the first U.S. state to ban fluoride in public drinking water. Quote, it's disheartening to see that a proven public health policy has been dismantled on the basis of distorted pseudoscience, end quote. And despite his about-face on the MMR vaccine, see above, RFK Jr. has said he plans to tell the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to stop recommending fluoridation in communities nationwide. He's assembling a task force to focus on the issue. Catfish, phishing, and other online predators. A video presentation by author Karen Bijkersma as she takes a deep dive into the dark web of exploitative online scammers, psychics, and practitioners of the black arts who preyed upon her while she was, quote, heartbroken and vulnerable, end quote. It's a very good video. 5 skeptical podcasts that make science and critical thinking less intimidating. Europeans, Brits, Americans. For some unknown reason, they've neglected the best skeptical podcast in the world. so we would naturally add the Australian component of this leading group, the Skeptic Zone. That should be Australian and a couple of loons, though, Tim. Items of interest. Not so real estate. Loftus Hall, Ireland's most haunted house, is up for sale. Complete with a card-playing devil, with one small caveat. The house for sale isn't the one where the devil appeared. That one was knocked down 150 years ago. Texas's vaccination blamed for measles outbreak. A reality check of claims that vaccine shedding is actually exacerbating a measles outbreak in Texas. It ain't true. Silly video story of the week. Ghost soldiers running across Gettysburg Road. Chilling footage shows ghost soldiers running across the road at Gettysburg. Or how to confuse a smear on your windscreen with an apparition. Science, skepticism, and the telepathy tapes. A quote, personal perspective, end quote. We should keep an open mind in the face of unexplained data, applying, quote, epistemic humility, end quote. This almost made it into the top half of the newsletter, except anyone who cites facilitated communication should tread very warily. Very. Dead ivermectin influencer promoted cyanide for cancer. Promoters of pseudoscience die like the rest of us, and some die very prematurely. An influencer who was pro-ivermectin and pro-almond seed is one of them. Was it caused by his own treatment? Some followers are concerned about their own symptoms. Uri Geller drops apocalyptic bombshell. Our favorite self-promoter has made a, quote, terrifying Donald Trump premonition and chilling date for global catastrophe, end quote. A nuclear apocalypse caused by Iran. Uri states that only immediate action can prevent a global catastrophe. He doesn't give an actual date. And lo and behold, it looks like that's happening. Well done, Uri. Psychic Loser Award. Quote, I'm a psychic and I know who will win the Grand National, end quote. Whoops! UK professional astrologer and tarot reader Inbal Honigman chose 4 horses in the recent Grand National horse race at Aintree. Out of 16 horses to finish, one of her choices came in 9th, one came in 14th, and 2 didn't finish at all. I hope they're okay. No one seems to have bothered getting back to her for a grilling, despite the fact that she takes money for this sort of thing. Obviously, she doesn't win at the track. Silliest opinion piece of the week. Doge an unsuspecting agent of the paranormal? Quote, what if Elon Musk and his musketeers are, in reality, dealing with demons? What if Doge is really an unsuspecting agent of the paranormal? To say that our governing bodies have been infiltrated by demons is not at all unreasonable, end quote. Say no more. Until I'm needed to fill in again, this is Kat McLeod from Kitty Corner Studios in Edmonton, Canada.
This is Susan Gerbic from Psychics Explained. That's the YouTube channel where we discuss and analyze in great depth all those people who say that they can speak to the dead, all those readings, how they look like they're actually communicating with people. Why do people fall for this? There's a reason. It's much more complicated than you would think. Come to my channel, watch our videos. We would love to have you become part of our conversation. Just visit us on YouTube at Psychics Explained or Psychic Sex Plained on YouTube.
Now it's time once again to go back to those archives at TROVE, T-R-O-V-E, trove.nla.gov.au, a free resource for the entire planet, the entire solar system, the entire galaxy, and so on. This is where you can search digital archives of newspapers and magazines and much more from the National Library of Australia. And what a wonderful way it is to visit our history. We revisit history. We've lived through it, and we go back to visit it all. I think you know what I mean. And it's a wonderful place to go when we're looking at how society viewed the paranormal, the supernatural, this sort of thing, over the decades and centuries. And this week I put in a search for the term precognition. Now, according to the dictionary, precognition is foreknowledge of an event, especially as a form of extrasensory perception. And I think, if I remember correctly, the film Minority Report, or the book and the film Minority Report, are based around this idea of precognition. So let's see what the Gippsland Times from Victoria were telling us on the 26th of August, 1950. Are you psychic? Until recently, scientists have done nothing but scoff. Ha! That's my impression of a scientist scoffing at people who claim to have psychic powers. But now they are discovering that 1 person in 5 has some degree of second sight. Really? Stories of prophecy, mind reading, and the ability to see through walls or across thousands of miles of space are no longer dismissed as idle gossip. They are seriously sought after by serious-minded research experts at 6 US universities and scientists at Oxford and Cambridge. They are clues to yet another psychic, and science wants to know all about them. Last month, a young woman sat at a desk in a psychic research office in New York, looking at a magazine advertisement. She leaned back, clicked a stopwatch, and noted the time. At that moment, 3,000 miles away in London, another woman turned to a group of scientists who were watching her intently and said, quote, "A small pony," end quote. The advertisement the young woman in New York was looking at was designed around a drawing of a pony. Now, quickly stopping here to say we know nothing of the protocol of this test at all, and we don't even know if this is true. That's something you always have to bear in mind. We don't know if it happened at all, and if it did happen, we don't know what the testing was. Maybe she had a choice of 2 pictures. We just don't know. Pioneer work. Experiments like this to probe the unknown world of mental telepathy and other twilight powers of the mind are taking place every day. Oh, I like that expression, twilight powers of the mind. And now, after 20 years of pioneer work by a few scientists, research into extrasensory perception points to a remarkable conclusion. Some people, as many as 1 in 5, have an additional sense that works spasmodically in their subconscious. It is this sense that enables them to foretell a future event, read another person's mind, no matter how far away, and see through walls, doors, and other visible barriers. But this does not mean that every story that Aunt Minnie tells you about her premonitions is a true example of psychic power. Many claims false. America's Psychical Research Society has found that 98% of claims to psychic power are false. This huge proportion of inaccuracy and imagination in trying to track down real examples of second sight is the greatest single problem facing psychic research scientists. But every now and then they come across a story that does suggest a psychic element. Here is a typical one. A 3-year-old boy named Billy was playing on the floor at home with his parents one afternoon when he suddenly stopped and walked towards the window. He wasn't tall enough to see over it, but he said sadly, "Aunt Helen isn't coming." The time was 2:30 p.m. Billy's father was about to tune into a wireless program, and he could vouch for the exact time of Billy's remark. Billy's parents laughed at him because, as far as they knew, his Aunt Helen was in her home 100 miles away. They hadn't seen or mentioned her for months, and they were not expecting her call. The next day, Aunt Helen telephoned to say that she'd been driving past the home the day before on her way to another town. She had meant to come in on a surprise visit, but she looked at her watch and decided she did not have time to stop. It had been 2:30 when she drove past. In a case like this, psychic research scientists prepare a special set of questions for the people involved. If the full facts, as related by several people, reveal that the story could not have been coincidence, mistake, or imagination, they make further tests on the person with the apparent psychic ability. The scientific checks are mainly carried out with a pack of special cards called ESP cards, extrasensory perception cards. And I simply remind you that this is printed words in the newspaper. It doesn't mean Billy ever existed, or if he did, he said what he said, or even if he said what he said, that he even had an aunt at all. It's not what we call very good evidence. Card tests. ESP cards have 25 in the pack, 5 showing a circle, 5 showing a star, and so on. The psychic person sits on the far side of a room, hiding from the man conducting the test by a screen. In a simple mental telepathy test, the psychic subject is asked to name the cards the experimenter is thinking about. To test ability to visualize an object at a distance, clairvoyance, the experimenter might ask the subject to name order of cards in a blank envelope. To test ability to foretell the future, precognition, there's that word, the subject would have to state the order of the cards after they have been shuffled. The cards would be shuffled mechanically, the packs changed frequently. Thousands of subjects have been tested in this way, and to cancel out the possibility of guesswork, some subjects have been tested over periods of days, even weeks. There are always certain people who score higher than mathematical chance allows. This means that psychic power really exists. Well, there you go. I'd better stop my involvement in skeptical investigations. According to this newspaper report in 1950, psychic powers really exist. Well, who knew? Anyway, let's read on. What is it? Some cynics maintain that the scores achieved in these tests are no better than mathematical flukes might produce. But the U.S. Institute of Mathematical Statistics has analyzed the results of several research men and has fully approved of their precautions against coincidence giving an apparently psychic result. The psychic research scientists make no claims about their work, merely emphasize that a great deal more research is necessary. So that's what they were saying 75 years ago, that a great deal of more research is necessary. Okay, you've had 75 years. Although many more scientists are becoming interested in psychic research, none is prepared to state what this uncanny power really is. Some think it might be the remnants of a primitive sense that operated among men before they could speak. Biologist Julian Huxley thinks it may be a new human capacity still in its earliest stage of development and evolution. All psychic research scientists agree that the power is a strange mental combination of flow and time and the concepts of the physical world. Most psychic exchanges occur between people who are close friends or members of the same family. Now let's see what was being written in the year 1936 on the 6th of June in the Courier Mail from Brisbane, Queensland. How much do we know of the supernatural? Examination of Evidence of Precognition Claims by H.F. Saltmarsh. Of all the phenomena which psychical research has to deal, precognition, i.e. supernormal knowledge of future events, is perhaps the most mysterious, as well as the most difficult to accept as genuine. Yet there is a large amount of excellent evidence of its reality. By researching the records contained in the journal and proceedings of the Society for Psychical Research for the first 50 years of its existence, I was able to find some 349 reported instances of apparent precognition. A detailed examination enabled me to reject a certain number as being too vague. How about that? Way back in 1936, somebody else discovered the same sort of thing that we discovered a couple of years back in the Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project. That's fascinating. Too vague? It says insufficiently evidenced, or else probably not precognitive. Again, that's the same sort of conclusions we reached many decades later. I had then 281 left. These I classified under various headings, and some interesting facts emerged. Precognitions occurring in dreams amounted to 116. Hallucinatory cases came next with 62, predictions by mediums numbered 51, and precognitive impressions not reaching the levels of hallucination 39. The remaining few were in classes too small to be important. I wonder if he discovered something we discovered. There were very few predictions in our project that we couldn't discover the truth of. Did this happen or did this not happen? It was vanishingly small, but sometimes there was just no way to verify if the prediction came true or not. The conclusion drawn from these figures is that precognition tends to occur most readily in states wherein the normal consciousness is more or less in abeyance. That is to say, in states of dissociation. Now, the rest of the article, which is a bit rambling, just goes on to more and more stories of this happened to this person and this happened to somebody else. But I think you get the idea. And for me, it's interesting to see that somebody else many years ago, many decades ago, was doing the same sort of thing that the Great Australian Psychic Prediction team did. The Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project. Yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister. And a big shout out to all those wonderful people who helped. And we have related this story before during the time that I was meeting with the Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project team. One morning here in Australia, it was the 7th of January. In the United States, it was the 6th of January, 2021. Susan Gerbeck accidentally butt-dialed the whole team, and a lot of people answered, and we just got chatting anyway, just as a social thing. And then we were all watching the TV news in horror as those people invaded the capital. Coincidence? You make up your own mind. Well, here's an interesting one. Letters to the editor, published in the Canberra Times on the 30th of October 1968. Sir, I have been commissioned to write a book dealing with the supernatural and would greatly appreciate hearing from any of your readers, in full detail, who have experienced hauntings, precognition, or anything related to the paranormal. I shall not divulge their names, etc., if so desired. Michael Hervey, 5 Dick Street, Hentley, New South Wales. And a quick Google search results in a book here on eBay for only $5, Fraternity of the Weird by Michael Hervey. A new collection of documented reports on strange events beyond human understanding by the author of They Walk by Night and Strange Happenings. And on the back cover it says noted author, reporter and critic Michael Hervey turns his attention to the shadowy realm beyond the ordinary and reveals the bizarre but true stories. Okay. True stories of the members of the fraternity of the weird. Among them, the theatre usherette who revealed startling facts about her previous existence while under hypnosis. The jeweled spider of antiquity, whose horrible curses are still effective today. The inhabitants of the planet Oros, whose story may change the theory of evolution. Then again, it may not. These are but a few of the bizarre, spine-chilling accounts published for the first time in the United States. $5, eh? And now to round off this segment, something a little left field, but sort of in keeping with the theme this week. This is from the Australian Women's Weekly, dated the 2nd of September, 1939. And it does talk about something which is dear to my heart, and that is radio plays, theatre of the mind. And the story is, psychologist writes radio plays, plenty of thrills in unusual new 2GB series. And this, of course, comes from the golden era of radio entertainment, where radio dramas, radio plays were huge. And 2GB is a major commercial AM station based here in Sydney. What is the secret of the supposed curse of the pharaohs? Is fire walking a feat? A feat. F-E-A-T. Is fire walking a feat of mental control or merely a nicely staged, managed piece of trickery? Well, it's a bit of a false dichotomy, but never mind. Why do Aborigines die through bone pointing? And I haven't heard about that for a long time, but bear in mind this story is from 1939. These and similar questions provide the theme for an unusual series of 12-minute radio plays beginning broadcast from 2GB at 7:45 p.m. every Monday and Thursday. Entitled The Strange Adventures of Dr. Dayton, the series was written by Melbourne psychologist Mr. J. Stuart Morrison, who has had many years' experience in all branches of psychic research. He has attempted in each of his plays to clarify some of the mysteries surrounding the supernatural, telepathy, psychometry, clairvoyance, and hypnosis. Dr. Danton, whose role is enacted by Hal Percy, is a psychiatrist whose investigations of the occult take him to many strange places and bring him many strange adventures. One of the stories in the series is actually based on a real-life adventure of the late Dr. William Tufts, Birmingham, a Fellow of the Royal Society. With a friend, Dr. Danton is marooned on a patch of land surrounded by lava that has gushed out of the 9-mile crater of Kilauea in Hawaii. And I hope I pronounced that okay. As the white-hot steam surrounds them, the pair prepare for death in the unbearable heat. However, an aged kahuna, in brackets magician, whom Danton had previously rescued from death in a car crash, approaches the seething mass of lava. His mysterious chanting is heard by the marooned pair above the hissing and boiling of the flowing pumice. Then the magician walks across the lava and protects the white men's feet from its heat as they walk back by his side. A trick of the human mind common to many of us is precognition. We see a place or object and are instantly convinced that we have encountered it before. A number of cases of this, together with a psychopathic condition called divided personality, provide interesting material for some of Dr. Danton's adventures. Other phrases deal with the mysteries of India's yogis, who are credited by many sober-minded observers with extraordinary mental powers. Strange tales are told of the occult influences which seem to surround some of the ancient Egyptian tombs opened by archaeologists. The tale of Pharaoh's curse was used to explain away some of the incidences that occurred to members of the Howard Carter expedition that opened the tomb of Tutankhamun. Rational explanations have been given, however, for some of the mysterious maladies from which excavators have been known to suffer. Scientists believe that the tomb dust, in many cases impregnated with decomposed minerals, bone dust and metals, may have a toxic effect on the system. This, however, does not explain away the mysterious hauntings attributed to places where the relics of ancient kings are stored. In one of Dr. Danton's adventures, a strange tale is told of what happened in an antiquarian's house after he had added the head of a mummy to his collection of ancient Egyptian curiosities. Spirit projection is another strange phenomena that has often been reported. Elliot O'Donnell, an English investigator, has recorded a number of cases of spirits projecting themselves from living people. 3 cases he mentions tell of the appearance of the ghosts of people in trains and on pavements. A ghost on a train. That's an interesting thought. Oh, I like the next paragraph. Skeptics may scoff. Have you ever scoffed? I mean, I guess I do. I mean, if somebody comes to me with a ridiculous claim, surely the right reaction is a scoff. I digress. Skeptics may scoff at these things, but the adventures of Dr. Danton quotes instances in which people have made statutory declarations regarding alleged mysterious happenings. Well, there you go. Whether there is a rational explanation for these matters or not, Dr. Danton succeeds in providing radio listeners with some first-class thrills. And accompanying this story is a wonderful photograph of 3 people away from the microphone. 3 of the principals of The Strange Adventures of Dr. Danton. Standing, Dorothy Mannix and Hal Percy. Seated, Beryl Walker. And how I would love to sit in all those years ago on one of their recordings of a radio play. Of course, in those days, the cast would gather around 1 or 2 microphones in the studio and act out a play, read the script, and play the characters. These days, quite often, and we do this here at the Skeptic Zone because people are dotted all around the world, people do their lines in their particular location, and then it's all sort of edited together. Well, there we are, just some references over the years in Australian newspapers to precognition. Precognition, a handy skill if it existed. And you can find out more about precognition and what's the opposite of precognition. There's a thought. When you go to Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, free for everybody in the cosmos, because when you go there, you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast, and thank you to those people who continue to support the Skeptic Zone at skepticzone.tv via Patreon or PayPal. And as our Australian dollar is still low, it dipped. Wow! It dipped in the week since the last episode. It dipped down below 60 cents. It's climbed back slightly. I think it's hovering around 62 cents. Regardless, that means if you're in North America and you contribute to the Skeptic Zone, your North American dollar is almost doubled by the time it is translated into Australian dollars. And a big thank you to those people who do contribute, no matter where you are in the world. It means the show can keep going. Coming up on next week's show, let me look into the future. I need Psychic Penny. Oh, speaking of Psychic Penny, I couldn't see the future. I had no idea how popular Psychic Penny would become after the recent adventures of Psychic Penny and the Galactic Federation. So popular, in fact, that people are wanting another series of adventures with Psychic Penny. This is under consideration. I promise you it's under consideration, but soon we hope to bring you something else. Psychic Penny's horoscopes. Keep a lookout for that coming up in the near future. And a big shout out to Psychic Penny. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.